Hello, and in today's video we are doing an FPL preview for game week number 22. That's right, we're looking back at how game week 21 got on. Did our transfers work? Did we get a green arrow? And more importantly, how are we looking ahead of the game week 22 deadline, which of course is coming up this Tuesday, the 30th of January at 6 p.m. So make sure, guys, you've got your transfers, your plans locked in ahead of the deadline, because of course there's FA Cup action this weekend. We'll know a lot more about watching those games going into game week 22, what the permutations are for the doubles, the blanks coming up, which we'll go through in a second. But do smash a like on the videos, subscribe for more content. If you're not already, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And we probably will do a deadline stream for game week 22 on Tuesday, right before we do lock in that team. So obviously a lot can change between now and then. This is just a main review of game week 21 and look ahead to 22. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this one and get in the comments what are your transfer thoughts ahead of the game week 22 deadline. So before we go any further, let's just talk about the FA Cup this weekend. So of course, Bournemouth against Swansea was last night. That was a massive 5-0 win for Bournemouth. But there are some more important for FPL games coming up in the FA Cup weekend. And of course, Solanke got back on the goal scoring kind of charts there with that Swansea game. So that's good to see if you're a Solanke owner. Don't forget his double game week against Luton could get put in at any point. But you would imagine it will be later on in the season, because there's going to be more of a priority, you would imagine, for Liverpool due to their lack of kind of weeks available to play that extra game against Liverpool Luton. That will get taken out of game week 26 now that Liverpool are in the Carabao Cup final taking on Chelsea, and therefore it makes most sense to move that Luton game into double game week 25, which means it's quite hard to see where Luton will then also fit in their game against Bournemouth. So if you're a Solanke owner and you're waiting for that double game week soon, I'd say don't wait. If that's the only reason you're keeping him, then you might have to jump ship. The problem with Solanke is just he's a very steady, solid asset, right? He's nailed, he gets penalties, and he's playing for a team that, okay, before that Liverpool game were quite in form and they played very well against Swansea. Now it is Swansea. They've got interesting fixtures coming up. The next couple, not too bad against West Ham, for instance. And now then after that, they got Newcastle and Man City. But then they go on a really good run around till game week 28. So Solanke's if in an ideal world you'd like to hold, but there are so many forwards putting their hands up right now. Someone like Ivan Toney, someone like, yep, you knew it was going to be Mr. Darwin. I don't know how he did it, but he did haul in game week 21 with that Bournemouth game, 11-pointer. Now, I'm not saying Darwin's a good FPL asset to go for, but you know, with the double coming up for Liverpool in game week 25, he's one to think about for sure. So that double is yet to be confirmed because of the fact that we haven't had Luton's game with Liverpool rescheduled for game week 25, but you would think it's likely that Liverpool double with that game against Luton at home and then Brentford also in that game week away from home. So an interesting double that for Liverpool. Also, Manchester City will double in game week 25, and they will have Manchester City have Chelsea at home and Brentford at home. So I wonder, will City players be preferred to Liverpool players because of the fact that in 26, Liverpool players are going to blank, of course, because of the Carabao Cup. So, talking of Cup, the FA Cup fixtures, well, what do they mean? Well, there's a big one tonight, isn't there? Tottenham against Manchester City. That will determine a lot of our FPL plans of transfers and especially captaincy, because Pep Guardiola has confirmed that Erling Haaland will not be fit to be in the squad for the Tottenham game. Well, what does that mean for our FPL teams in game week 22? Man City have Burnley at home on Wednesday, so he gets an extra day, the deadline obviously Tuesday, to recover Haaland. But the problem with this is there's some doubt about whether he'll start. So will Erling Haaland in 20 minutes off the bench be worth bringing in and captaining? That's the question. When you can always try and get him in game week 23, when Man City, they've got a really nice fixture in game week 23, and you kind of think Haaland obviously at any point in the season is, you know, bearing on ridiculous if you don't get him. But Man City in game week 23 have Brentford. I look at that and think that's a good fixture, because the way Brentford defensively have been doing this season, you need him by Everton. I think he's essential by Everton. And then, of course, Man City will have the double. Now, with Erling Haaland, the double game week in 25 is against Chelsea and Brentford, and they're both at home. We know Haaland's good at home. So if he's fit for that double, we're going to want him, and a lot of people are going to triple captain him. Now, the question is, of course, will Mo Salah be fit by game week 25? Because he's now injured, thanks to his injury picked up in AFCON. He's out for about a month from now, so he should be back around the end of February. But what does that mean? Well, it could mean he's back in game week 24, or if it's game week 25, then he could only be back for the second game of 25. Because if he recovers in time for their semi-final, Egypt, if they get that far in the Africa Cup of Nations, then if he gets to the final, or even gets to the semi-final and then finishes in the third place playoff, then, especially the final, there's a chance he's going on a little tour and a parade with the Liverpool players, the Egypt players, I should say, and so that makes the doubt, does he even play the first game of game week 25? And therefore, you're bringing in Salah when he blanks in 26 and possibly now 29 for one game, right? And so that's not as optimal to triple captain. So Haaland's fixtures in the other doubles, he's got a possible double against Brighton and Fulham away in game week 37, I believe it is, and also a possible game against Tottenham, I think, in double game week 34. So it's not ideal, is it? It's not optimal. And so you look at these two home games and you think, yeah, it could be better to triple captain Erling Haaland. But I see the arguments for free hitting in 25, because if you've got not many Liverpool players, not many City players, and you need to get them all in at once without having to take loads of hits, it's not that far away from game week 25. So getting in Trent, getting in Jota might not be that easy without the, wild card or the free hit activated. Now, wildcard 24 is something I've looked at. It's been mentioned on the official FPL pod by Sam Bonfield. It's a very good point, and I agree with her, wholeheartedly, that game week 24, if you can set up for 25 and 26, then it could be really good. But the problem is, we don't know in 2 weeks' time whether these players like Salah, Haaland, Trent even, will be fit and ready for game week 25. So it's quite hard to activate a wildcard now based off the little information we have. But by the time you activate your wildcard a couple of weeks down the line, you might not have enough team value to afford it. So it's really hard to kind of work that out. But Erling Haaland, obviously, whenever he's fit, you'd think he's going to have to come in. So if he's going to be playing 90 minutes against Burnley, then of course we're going to be wanting to get him in. But there's no assurances of that. And will Pep be that concrete? Well, we know what Pep's like in press conferences. So it makes it hard for those Erling Haaland targeters for game week 22. So 23 is looking more likely. Well, what does that mean for captaincy? It means there's not many options, because you've got Richarlison at home to Brentford, you've got Jota, who's in great form, at home to Chelsea, and of course you might look at a Man City player, but there's just not a lot of certainty with those players, because they don't know if they're going to play minutes. If Kevin De Bruyne is coming back off the bench, will he take minutes off Foden? Will he take minutes off Julian Alvarez? So therefore, there's not really an amazing captaincy shout outside of Erling Haaland for that Burnley fixture. And it feels like a City attacker in that game is essential, but it's hard to pin who would you bring in and who would you captain. So the FA Cup fixtures, Sheffield Wednesday Coventry is irrelevant to FPL, but one is relevant is Chelsea Aston Villa, because if Chelsea win that game, then they will play Aston Villa in game week 29, whereas Chelsea will not. So we might want Chelsea players like Cole Palmer for game week 29. So if Villa can win that, that could be crucial. But then we're all kind of invested in Villa players anyway. So that's one to think about with Ollie Watkins. If Chelsea end up winning, then Villa will have a fixture in 29. And then Watkins, where his form has not been great, but his fixtures look great, then that's an excuse to hold Ollie Watkins. But all this thing that we need to find out is after the results from this weekend's games. It's fortunately just before the game week 22 deadline, but the next round of the FA Cup, the fifth round, that's when we'll know a lot more about 29 after those games. And so you kind of think, well, that's not great, because if I'm thinking about a free hit in 25 or 29 or a wild card, you don't know if you're going to need to have the free hit for 29 to get through that blank, because there'll probably be about 4 or 5 fixtures in that game week. But if there's a lot of Premier League teams getting knocked out of the cup and they're playing each other and there's lots of them left, then there could be more fixtures played in 29. So it's might not need a free hit by then, but you won't know that until closer to the time. So interesting to see that Chelsea Villa game, who wins out of that based on who you've got invested in them. Because if you have Cole Palmer and you know that he plays in 29, well, the blank in 26, if you can just bench him, you can keep him possibly, because he's one of the best value players in the game. So not selling him is, ideal. But obviously, if you've also got Pedro Porro, you've got Liverpool triple up, then that's a lot of players to get rid of. And Trent is included in that. You've got players, maybe a Luton player. If you go in all their double in 25, then you have to bench them. So it just makes it hard to negotiate without a wild card. And that's why I'm thinking, who do we want to kind of get the blank in 29 at Chelsea and Villa? Probably you would say Aston Villa to have a blank game week, because then what that means is you can keep Cole Palmer, who's a better asset, and you can get rid of someone like a Watkins who's not been delivering. Other fixtures, Bristol City against Nottingham Forest. I don't think anyone's going to be looking at Forest players, most likely, but you never know. Someone like Chris Wood is quite good at the moment. Tottenham Man City, though, is the big one. So Spurs Man City, without Erling Haaland in the squad, it makes it hard to know what to do with him in 22. But it will be interesting to see how many minutes does Kevin De Bruyne play, because if De Bruyne is going to play a lot of minutes, then that maybe starts giving you more confidence he'll start the game against Burnley. Even if it's 50 minutes, 60 minutes, that's at least something in his legs. But if he plays no minutes in the game against Tottenham in the FA Cup, Kevin De Bruyne, which I'd be surprised by, then you kind of think, well, okay, that means he'll start the game against Burnley, but not necessarily, because this is Pep we're talking about, and he likes momentum for players to get minutes in their legs. Now, Kevin De Bruyne, there's no guarantee that he will play most of the Tottenham game, and that means he starts against Burnley, because he's going to have to take this very, very carefully. He's got an injury, he's come back from, he's going to be eased in. So he started, not many games in the last kind of few weeks because of that. He didn't come off with an injury, fortunately for them, against Newcastle, and he wants to keep it that way. So they have to be careful with him. You're paying 10 million, FPL pounds for someone who's not necessarily going to start. Maybe he could, but there's no guarantee of it. So that's one I'd be wary of. With Foden maybe more likely to start, then he could be a good way to save that money. So if Foden starts, that'll be interesting to see him tonight. Also, you've got the Tottenham perspective. Maddison, will he be back from injury? Because people are looking at that Brentford game thinking he could come back for that. And he was so good to own at the first half of the season. So, will he be fresh from his injury? Will he be, ready to go? Or will he be a bit rusty? We'll have to see. Also, how will Spurs do, with their situation without Son still? Are they going to get the goals from Richarlison? Is Werner going to affect Richarlison's minutes? We'll have to see. And City players as well, like Alvarez, will he be a good captaincy shout? Because if Erling Haaland doesn't start the Burnley game, then a lot of people might be tempted by Julian Alvarez with the captaincy. But his recent form, Alvarez, has not been great. And I'd be worried about Alvarez getting reduced minutes because of Kevin De Bruyne coming back. So it's a hard thing to hang your hat on. But certainly I think there's a lot could be revealed by Tottenham and Man City's result. And if Spurs end up losing the FA Cup game, well, then that will be a relief for those that hold their players in 26 if you're a Spurs player, because then at least they'll have a fixture in 29. If they also blank in 29, then you can maybe think Pedro Porro, as good as values as he's been, someone like that you can get rid of, because it would just be too hard to negotiate otherwise. Also, you've got Sheffield United, Brighton. If Brighton win that one, then that will just be another competition where it's a bit of a headache. How many minutes will their players get? João Pedro, Ferguson, all great options when they play, but you just don't know that. I'll be interested to see if anyone's got like a Archer still, because now they've got Brereton Diaz and he's scored against West Ham. Will he be a minutes risk, Archer? And if they have a blank in 29, a lot of people might want to get rid of Archer. So will be interesting to see if Sheffield United can win that game. Then we've also got Everton, Luton. Again, Luton players, if they're going to be tasty for the double game week in 25, they don't really want to be having a blank in 29, because then if you don't have a free hit in 25 and you don't want to, just do a chip to get in the Luton players, you want the Luton players for the long haul, you won't want them blanking in 29. So because they blank in 26, benching them maybe or selling them is fine, but to have another blank would be a bit of a sucker punch. So those that are going for Luton players, if it's not a free hit, they'll probably want them to end up end up losing that Everton game, so they have a fixture in 29. And then you've got Fulham, Newcastle. Fulham, they'll probably be up for this one. Newcastle have not been in great form, but a few people tripled up on Newcastle players. So again, if they end up blanking in 29, that won't be that helpful. That will be a bit of a kind of problem with future games if Newcastle have more matches. Obviously, they've still got games to play in the FA Cup. And that's the thing. It's a game against Fulham that you'd fancy Newcastle, but if Gordon, Isak, Trippier are all blanking in 29 because they've got a fixture, then it would be a bit of a shame. West Brom Wolves, I mean, not many people are going to own Wolves players, but maybe Neto, if Hwang, when he comes back, that might be a problem if they're blanking in 29. So things to think about, certainly. Liverpool players, if they're not already on the radar, they should be. But the problem is, do you bring in the 3 Liverpool picks? And who are those 3? Because Salah's injured, Trent should be back for the game against Norwich in the FA Cup, but you'd hope he'd start the Chelsea game if you're a Trent owner. You're going to probably want him by 25, but then do you sacrifice like another Liverpool midfielder? Do you go for a Darwin, a Trent and a Jota? Or do you go for Salah, hoping that he's back by 25? That's the debate that will be on people's minds. So it's a tough one to decide. And, they probably will beat Norwich. So that means, will they blank in both 26 and 29? We'll have to see. Man United, obviously, they play Newport, so you would imagine Manchester United get the win there. But again, Manchester United players, are they worth going for? Because at the moment, their form has just been a bit up and down. Now, that's the FA Cup matches. Let's look at Gameweek 21 and how I did. 63 points. Now, this is interesting because I got a green arrow, and I tell you, this part of the season has been fantastic for me post Game Week 9 wildcard, because it is now 8 green arrows in my last 10 game weeks. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Really happy with it. And it was a nice, solid Game Week 21 for me. 63 points, going to an overall rank of 268,246. And I've got to say, shout out to the legend that is Ben from the Chasing Upside podcast. I just went on, had a little chat with him about my FPL management style, and there'll be a future pod on the Chasing Upside podcast account, so do check that out. They're doing some great stuff. I think FPL Mate's going on soon. But yeah, what a guy. He was a great lad, and yeah, it was a really fascinating talk, so do check that out when it comes out. But we were talking in that about kind of what do you do when FPL is going well? What you don't do is rest on your laurels, and I won't be doing that. But what I will say is I'm very pleased with the recent progress. Since that Game Week 9 wildcard, it's been only 4 red arrows in, what's that, around 10 game weeks or so, 11 game weeks. So yeah, it's been a really nice run for me, but I would also say it's not over. There's a long way to go, and there's chip season now, so it's where it really counts. So if I can kind of get into the top 100k from this position, that would be great, and then anything more than that I'd be very happy with, because this has been a very tough season, a lot of injuries and a lot of kind of reacting to things that we didn't expect to happen. So a tough FPL season for sure, but we're going to keep plugging away, because that is FPL, a marathon, not a sprint. But yeah, my true transfers in Game Week 21, Pascal Gross and Bukayo Saka. Now, Bukayo Saka I actually hadn't owned since Game Week 6, but I felt that he was one that I needed, with his effective ownership likely to be over 120%. I didn't think that he was in great form, but I just felt that he needed to come in as a shield transfer for me, because if he just got anything and I didn't even own him, let alone captain, then it would hurt my rank. But unfortunately, Saka decided to blank. I captained him, should have gone with Cole Palmer, but hindsight is a wonderful thing. At the time, I was fairly happy with Palmer captain, and then just not bringing in Saka and doing a Richarlison or a Jota. I did neither, and it punished me big time. So it was really painful to see that from Saka, to see the blank, but also a blank from Pascal Gross, and he actually came in for Salah. Now, I felt that I needed to sell Salah because the money was going to be useful to get Haaland back in 22. Now, of course, now Haaland is a doubt for 22. Then it's interesting. Do we leave that money in the bank, or do we get in someone like a Kevin De Bruyne who takes up a bit more of the money in the midfield? So an interesting decision to make there. But I'm fairly happy with Pascal Gross, even though he blanked against Wolves. He's got great fixtures for a long, long time. So if I wildcard in Game Week 24, then he'll probably leave. But until then, the fixtures are worth keeping. He's got Luton in Gameweek 22, so I'm happy about that. And then Saka, similar sort of thing. I brought him in for this captaincy. It didn't work out. Do I believe he's a great FPL asset at the moment? No. But can he be in the future? Yeah, his XG is still great. His underlying data is fantastic. And it's better than it was at this stage last season. So there's something not going right with him at the moment. But that's sure to change. And FPL, it happens like this. It evens out sometimes. And you can just kind of get the returns later on. So I think Saka, up until our wild card, is still worth keeping. Especially for Nottingham Forest, where, I know that Forest have been better recently under Espirito Santo, but at the same time, Nuno's not keeping their team getting from clean sheets. They're still struggling on that side of things. So I think Saka's a nice option to just hold at the moment, but I'm wary of the fact he's on the chopping block. So yeah, 63 points. Areola, that's an unfortunate one, isn't it? Because they get a penalty, Sheffield United, and you're thinking, go on Areola, a little cheeky pen save. It got to that point where it was away Sheffield United, and I benched him in the games against Arsenal and Man United, and he got big hauls, 8-9 points in both of those weeks, 8-10 points. And then, of course, I played him in game week 20, I think it was, against Brighton, which was lovely stuff. Nice 11-pointer. But then the one week you think, okay, this is a banker, surely. He then ends up conceding 2 against Sheffield United. I say conceding 2, conceding 1, but he ended up getting subbed off just before the penalty. So who'd have known? Who'd have known if Areola would have saved McBurney's penalty? But it wasn't great, was it, from Fabianski? And yeah, just unlucky. Hopefully Areola's fine and recovered with that kind of hurt lip. But look, at the end of the day, a shame to see the clean sheet wipe out. West Ham defensively have just not been the most consistent this season. I know they got clean sheets against the likes of Brighton and Man United, but I think that was a little blip. Areola's recent performances have been very good, but yeah, shame about that. 3 points though, we'll take that as a little mini win. Save points in there, and as I said, because of the fact he was subbed off, it was in the end actually quite fortuitous because he didn't get the 2 goals conceded -1 on his tally. So Alphonse Areola is a bit of a weird one this season because he's highly owned and he's been good value, but he's also been frustrating for many FPL managers. So I think he's just staying there. He's just one to just sleep on for the rest of the season because there's not a lot else in terms of goalkeeping good at FPL picks, so it's just worth rolling with it, I think, with Areola. The defence, though, absolutely class. Let's start with you, Gabriel. Absolutely hero of the game week. Gabriel dos Santos Magalhães. Finally, the redemption arc is complete. You love to see it. He was such a troll the first few weeks of the season. Against Palace, got dropped. Against Nottingham Forest, got dropped. Against Fulham, got dropped. And all these weeks, Saliba just absolutely outdoes his points. And this one week, it's back on even Stevens, level terms, and finally some redemption for Gabriel. A 17-pointer, it should have been more, should have been a 21, 18-pointer if the goal had stood, the second goal. Very harsh that that's an own goal from Dean Henderson, but that's the Premier League panel for you, and they ended up saying that Gabriel has got a knock going into Game Week 22, so have to monitor that, see what Arteta says. Even if he does say nothing, I would imagine he will play, so I'm going to start him, I think, in Game Week 22, but what a legend. Either way, what a legend, and one of the best value picks this season, just because of his goal threat. Recently, he's coming, good with the goals against Liverpool. He was on my bench, but at least, finally, it's gone well for me this time with Gabriel, because, he got that clean sheet against Brighton. I was thinking, right, finally. The clean sheets have not been good recently for Arsenal, but to get that 17-pointer with the clean sheet and with the 2 bonus, it was a shame that Martinelli had to, steal a bit of the thunder, especially with me having Saka as captain and no Martinelli. But look, it's what you love to see from Gabriel, so I'm not going to complain at all. And he's just a very easy hold until anything goes drastically wrong. Saliba also got a 6-pointer, so again, nice to get that double clean sheet Arsenal, because that strategy has not exactly paid off for me in the time I've had double Arsenal defence. They've got a lot of kind of clean sheet wipeouts and it's been painful, but Saliba has been highly owned. I haven't owned him for great weeks, to be honest, but at least it's something, 6 points. And Porro's also got 6, despite conceding against Man United 2 goals. He's so attacking every single game week and, yeah, delivers another nice return. I mean, Porro has just been a fantastic buy since I brought him in for that game against Crystal Palace, against Nottingham Forest back in game week 18, I think it was. So really, really good buy for me. And I think ultimately, 17 it was actually, ultimately he is going to be easier to keep on the bench if I can. But what I will say is, if they blank in 29 and 26, then it will be easier to let go. But I want him back after, so he's been so good, such good value, and started the season at a very, very nice price of just 5 million. So yeah, Pedro Porro, absolute king, and we'll see how he plays in the Man City game tonight. Midfielders, we've got Cole Palmer. Gutted I didn't captain him, of course, but I just looked at that Fulham game and thought, yeah, Fulham have been quite good recently. I don't think they'll get destroyed. They didn't. It was just a low XG chance, a penalty, obviously outside of non-penalty XG. You know, he wasn't doing loads in that Fulham game. He was, looking dangerous at times, but yeah, he just always gets penalties, and it's a bit like a kind of situation in previous years where you had people like, McAllister with Brighton just gets penalties. That's why we have penalty takers in FPL. And yeah, the captaincy I was thinking about, because of his haul against Luton, I was tempted. My first gut instinct was Palmer, and I should trust my gut more often. But I just got scared with Saka's ownership. I was just thinking, if I just don't own the kid, it's going to hurt me. And I just looked at the two teams and I thought, who do I trust more from an offensive point of view, Arsenal or Chelsea? And based on their midweek loss to Middlesbrough, I thought that's not good for Cole Palmer. And so, yeah, maybe I should have just thought that they would bounce back. But I went for Saka. It was a bit of a swing, but not the end of the world. Just the 10 points from Palmer. And then Saka, very frustrating. I mean, the fact that they scored 5 goals and Saka was involved in none of them. Now, he should have had an assist for that Gabriel goal that should have been the second one. But, of course, because it was given as an own goal for Henderson, it was a Gabriel assist instead. I mean, Saka, just so unlucky to not get anything from that. And he's just not been the same this season for some reason. But I think he's such a good player. Surely it will come good eventually. And it was frustrating, that final Martinelli goal. You think, pass it to Saka, and I could have had a return. But, at least he's, still a very decent pick on his day. It's just, I need to see more of those days for Saka in the next few weeks for him to justify that price. And one guy I've absolutely had all season since that wildcard, and he's saved my season, Anthony Gordon. The Game Week 9 wildcard, Gordon and Hwang were the 2 additions. And those differentials have really saved me, because Gordon has been so good for so long. And his home form is much better than his away form, it has to be said. So doing that, benching him in the games against the away sides, and then playing him in his home games has been a really good strategy. And he scored yet again a great finish against Man City. He's just fixture proof. That's the thing with Gordon. So he's just ticking along nicely. Got me a lot of kind of team value and value stored up in him, because I bought him when he was very cheap. And so, yeah, he's been a very, very good investment. And now the fixtures for Newcastle are getting better, so I don't have any plans to get rid until a wildcard, but we'll have to see when that is. Now, Pascal Gross has been a frustrating transfer. He was my little differential this week. I thought I'd go for a high upside pick because, good fixtures and ticking along nicely. A steady Eddie. He never quite hauls Pascal Gross, but you just know what you're going to get from him. Someone who's going to start and get minutes. And that's what I was worried about. Someone like Richarlison with Werner coming in. Someone like Jota, who we didn't know was going to get all the minutes, but he is now. And someone like Foden at the time was a bit of a doubt with De Bruyne. So I just wanted to get 2 players I knew were going to play, Saka and Gross, and yeah, it backfired, and I should have gone for the high upside, riskier picks. But that was, this week, it might balance out in Game Week 22. So that's what I ended up doing. The midfield was okay, I suppose. The forward line was far from that, and really not exactly ideal going into Game Week 22, because if Haaland isn't back, then where are the points going to come from forwards? Well, Tony's back with a goal after his return from his ban. He scored. Now, Tony's tempting, but the fixtures are just not great. Despite the double in Game Week 25, it's Liverpool and Man City, which is not exactly ideal. And he probably does have more interest because of the fact he won't blank. So he's got a confirmed fixture in Game Week 29 against Burnley. But the problem with Tony is he's not necessarily going to be scoring every week. He gets penalties. All right, Brentford have not been great this season. He does start every game, but he's a lot of money, 8 million, when you can get Solanke for a bit less, and he's just as good, if not better. So I think Solanke is one to sleep on, If we knew that the double was coming up soon for Solanke, then I'd be more tempted to hold. Watkins is in bad form, so it's more tempting to sell. But I would say with Watkins is he's the sort of player you can get rid and he hauls straight away. And the fixtures are great for Aston Villa, so it's hard to bide company and part company with any of those two. Julian Alvarez, on the other hand, he was a short-term transfer I made back in Game Week 20, just basically for that Sheffield United fixture. He scored for me. I owned Alvarez earlier on in the season. He delivered really, really well. Around Game Week 4 or 5, he got big hauls against the likes of Fulham. He got a nice return against Wolves as well in Game Week 7. So, look, Alvarez has done well for me this season. Now is not the time, though, to necessarily keep him. Even though he's got the double in 25, I'm just not sure about his minutes going forward. And his form has just not been the best. So, he feels like the most easily dispensable for Erling Haaland whenever he's fit. But the question is, when will that be? And if we're not happy with Haaland this week, are we still happy with Alvarez? Would he be a captaincy option against Burnley? Is he going to get reduced minutes? So should we swap out Alvarez for another striker that's not Haaland if he's not fit yet? Well, it makes a bit of sense to hold Alvarez and then get rid in 23 when you want Haaland back. So that's what I'm thinking. Alvarez looks dispensable, but the bench, 3 from Dubravka, yeah, okay, whatever. He matched Areola. 1 from Trippier, obviously that was not a good one. From Newcastle's defence against Man City. It's a wonder, do I bench Trippier again in Game Week 22? It's tempting because I got a Villa fixture which doesn't look easy on paper. Taylor's also got an injury. That's not ideal. He didn't play the game against Luton, which, to be fair, they conceded in anyway. And then Hwang Hee-chan I just left there because I looked at Salah and Son, who I sold for Saka and Gross respectively, and I felt that I needed to kind of get money for Haaland. I didn't need to get money by selling Hwang, and Hwang is quite a differential anyway, so when people sell him, I didn't think I'd get any price drops, so that's why he's just there. And to be honest, it just means I can have less of a benching headache each week. If I keep Hwang, then I've got less kind of benching problems going forward. I can just know who I'm going to bench. Now, I say that, the benching problems are still there to an extent, but not as bad as they would have been if I'd have, got rid of Hwang. Hwang is a thing that I'm debating this week whether I do sell, but let's talk about my Game Week 22 lineup and we can get into that. And now Areola's got Bournemouth. Bournemouth is a fixture I see as a very good fixture on paper because they can blow a bit hot and cold, Bournemouth, with their offence. Their stats aren't the most appealing. XG, West Ham defensively haven't been great this season, but their recent form from clean sheets has been good. So you would think a green fixture on the FDR for Areola is not that bad, but Solanke's obviously going to be a big threat in this game, and West Ham didn't look good against Sheffield United. So it's one of two ways. I've got Solanke in my team. If Solanke does blank, then an Areola clean sheet would be nice. If Solanke scores, then I'll surrender the Areola clean sheet. It works like that, really. But would I consider a captaincy for Solanke? Probably not, because I just think trusting that Bournemouth will turn up is a bit too risky when I'd rather go for someone like a Richarlison or a Jota. But talking about Areola and clean sheets, the clean sheets have not been great this season for defenders either. So I wonder, Forest away, they struggled in that game last season. Taiwo Awoniyi with the goal. I think Arsenal, good performance against Palace, but Palace weren't great. So I wonder, will Forest get a goal there? It's possible for my clean sheet wipeout. I considering maybe benching one of Saliba or Gabriel, but now I'm thinking just start both of them, because if what happens like they did against Liverpool, where one of them gets a goal and I bench them, it will be painful. But Gabriel hopefully will be fine to play against the Forest, and Saliba the same. Is going to stay there because he's just nailed. Now Porro is playing against Brentford, who defensively they're not the best, so some attacking upside for Porro there. But I would say the clean sheet wipeout looks likely with Tony in form and Spurs just not keeping clean sheets in general, but you never know. So if you're looking at a rogue captaincy shout, maybe Pedro Porro, but I just never like captaining a defender because there's a good chance that if they don't get an attacking return and they concede a goal, then that's kind of your captaincy in the mud. Whereas an attacker, you feel was more likely to get a return, even if they, end up the team conceding a goal. So midfielders, Palmer's got Liverpool. I don't want to bench Cole Palmer. I never have this season, but those that benched him in Game Week 20 will know the pain of that. Obviously, he played really well against Luton. He's just the sort of player you just never know he's going to return because he's got penalties up his locker. And Liverpool, I think, is an interesting one. Obviously, they just announced Jurgen Klopp will be leaving at the end of the season. But they have been one of the better defences of Liverpool this season, so it's not going to be easy for Palmer. But if he wins a pen, then that's routes to points. Saka on the vice-captaincy at the moment. Now, it's not the worst fixture for a captaincy, but after what just happened to Saka, I'm a little bit put off. However, how much should we look into that with past captaincy blanks? Should we just look at the fact it's one of the best teams in the league against one of the worst defences, and it's a proven FPL asset in Saka? Granted, he's not been great this season, but he is still one of the highest scoring points midfielders this season, and the recent form has not been good, but maybe this could change. We don't know. Gordon, Villa, good fixture. Villa defensively this season have not been the most squeaky clean all the time. They have had good moments and they've had bad moments, but I guess that's the same as every defence this season. But Gordon's been such good value. I'm not looking to bench him anytime soon. Pascal Gross, Luton away, good fixture. I think Gross could definitely get a red attack and return in that one, because Luton have definitely not been the most solid defensively. They've been worse defensively from an away perspective, but they're still a good fixture that at the Kenilworth. And then the 3 forwards, Alvarez on the captaincy. Now, yeah, I'm going for it if I don't bring in Haaland, because do I bring in a City mid? Maybe, but if I think that Alvarez is going to play it over Haaland, is he the worst captaincy shout? Maybe not. Maybe he is. I'm not sure. But the recent form has not been great, and I just worry about, if, for instance, someone else takes penalties, that will be a kind of another cap to going for someone else. So Alvarez, not sure about he's the best captaincy. Then Watkins, Newcastle, good fixture. Newcastle away from home have not been good defensively this season. So that's why I'm benching Trippier, because I just expect Villa to score a couple there. But Trippier could always haul, we know that, at any time. It's just, I think it's unlikelier in an away fixture. And Watkins has actually got a good record against Newcastle. So his recent blanks, I would just hold him for this game, see how he does, and then reassess. And then Solanke, West Ham, good fixture. And of course, there's always a chance that Solanke can be the one that goes for Haaland if he's fit, but I just don't think I like that as much as selling Alvarez. So I think Solanke's here to stay, and West Ham is not a bad fixture at all. The bench then is Dubravka, Trippier, Taylor and Hwang. Now, if I end up selling Hwang for a midfielder who I think can be a better captaincy shout than Alvarez, say a Phil Foden or a Jota or a Richarlison, then that leaves me an issue, because then it means I'm benching 2 of Trippier, Taylor. Actually, no, Taylor already on the bench, but I'm benching 2 of... Actually, then I would have to start Taylor, wouldn't I? Or would I have to play bench 2 of them? I suppose I wouldn't. But my point is, I would have to bench Trippier. Oh, I would be benching 2 because I'm replacing Hwang. Yeah, so that's my point. Taylor can still be on the bench, but I'd be playing 2 of the 4 of Saliba, Gabriel, Gordon and Trippier. And at the moment, because Hwang is on the bench, I can bench just Trippier. But I don't want to bench Gordon with the form he's in. I don't really want to bench Gabriel because of the 17-point haul we just got, and he's always going to have attacking threat. Forest from set pieces are not great. Saliba, also very nailed and gets bonus points, so it would be a bit foolish maybe to bench him. So it makes it hard to bench any of those people if I want to buy a Hwang replacement. So as much as I'm tempted by Foden and someone like Jota, how do I get them in? I mean, Kevin De Bruyne is a tempting captaincy option, but again, will he start the game against Burnley? Do we know that for sure? So I'm looking at... I was going to do Alvarez to Haaland. Now that's a bit up in the air with Haaland's fitness. We'll have to see if we get any news from Pep before Tuesday, because then if that's the case, then I can just roll the... not roll. I've got 1 free transfer, but I can just do that as my only move. But yeah, I wonder whether going for a replacement for Hwang is worth it if I think I'm going to captain them. Because if I like the look of Richarlison, okay, factor in the fact he blanks in 25, not ideal. Oh, sorry, in 26, and then has, Son coming back from the Asian Cup. Would he get minutes, etc.? Then you've got Jota, who is in great form, but he will also blank in 26. I don't know. He's got Chelsea at home, not the best of captaincy options. If I think Saka's a good captain, I could just stick it on him and not make the second transfer. But I'm saying second transfer. It might be my only transfer if I don't bring in Haaland. So I suppose in theory, the captaincy shout is a plausible reason to sell Hwang, but then it leaves me that benching problem, and I'm not sure, is it worth benching one of the Arsenal defenders if I think Forest do score? But it's Nottingham Forest, it's not the worst fixture, difficult decision. So a few things to mull over there, but a lot of that will depend on, what's the kind of FA Cup results and what they're saying. So Yeah, in terms of contenders, really, it's Haaland if he's fit, coming in for Alvarez, and then for Huang, maybe someone like Jota, KDB, if I've got the money, Foden, Richarlison. I've also looked at Eze and Kudus because they're both differentials that I'm tempted in, but Palace's form recently has not been great, and Kudus is back from the Africa Cup of Nations, but will he be straight back in with goals? You know, he's got to get back in with Bowen, and West Ham just weren't great in the game against Sheffield United. So I'm wondering, would it be a shout that's a bit too rogue? Like, you wouldn't captain Kudus, for instance. So I think it's probably either Richarlison, Jota, or Foden that comes in for me if we get news that Haaland isn't coming into the team for the Burnley game. So that's my transfer thoughts, and that is my video done for this one. I hope you have enjoyed. Smash a like on it, and let me know your Game Week 22 thoughts and transfers, and I'll see you in the deadline stream on Tuesday. Hope you have enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.